Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Looking Deeper with the Reverend Sandra Herrick and yours truly, Dana, Denise King Francisco. Tonight we're talking about something I think that needs to be talked about, toxic spirituality and what happens when the lie is exposed. Good evening, Sandra Herrick.
Good evening, Dana. How are you?
Good.
Everybody. Oh. No, we just kind of like flew under the radar to get to our next event.
We did. I just got done teaching a wonderful course in working with the Mystic Angels and petition writing and working with candles, and just an astonishing group of souls. So what a great segue to tonight's conversation.
Okie dokie. So let's talk about it.
Let's do
this
it.
Is one of those nights where, I think we're on the brink of spirituality again in another phase of what the Holy Mother what's it all about, Alfie? Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Exposure, when the veil gets ripped off, and what happens when the lie gets revealed, or the denying aspect of our psyche opens up and sees what we couldn't see, or understand what we couldn't understand. Something's breaking in all of our psyches. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Yeah. And I want to be able to talk to everybody about this with you in that space that you and I live so deeply in, and that is the spiritual world. But it's the spiritual world that isn't the hokey or the place to hide out. You and I do not go into our spirituality to hide away from the truth or to deny that good, bad, and ugly exists. I know for a fact that you and I in our spirituality and all the work that we do go in to expose the lie, even if everybody that we work with doesn't quite know that that's what we're doing. How would you like to say more about that? Dana?
Well, I think part of the course of my work at the Temple Within all along has been about rattling some cages and challenging the balance of what people have always been told or thought, or were made to believe about, in my case anyway, Catholicism and mysticism.
Exactly.
So I've been a challenge to the balance of the status quo since forever.
Right. I mean, you were born with this on your heart and soul to be a representative for.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel that within myself. And I want to be able to say to people that, we're in a time of exposure that brings to light what happens generationally. And I think we should honor that too, of, the ancestors and our grandparents and our mothers and our fathers, that there's a time when a generation loses the power over them that was cast by the elders or the parental or the authority that says we must be obedient. And, it happens in our teenage years. It happens as we grow up. And it happens because all of a sudden we see through our own lens or our own psyche of what it is we don't want to be governed by, or what it is that we feel we've been told no longer truly holds the sacredness for who we are, or even just the right for us to be. And I want everybody to start thinking how you've been lied to, what you've been told that was a lie, that will challenge your psyche, break your heart, confuse the family dynamic, challenge the church, challenge the government, challenge the authority that you are willing to break away from to have autonomy.
That's a lot.
And that's a lot. And we're at the precipice of, we're not at the cliff anymore. We've jumped in. We're in the hot water. All this.
We are.
Yeah. Nobody's looking over the cliff anymore. We're in it. And I think it's important that we realize that things we have been told, that we have invested our lives in, when we hear that they are fractured truths or blatant lies or deceptions that kept us blind, it shatters us.
It does.
It torques our psyches. It makes us lose our balance. What would you like to say a little bit about that, so that we can really, we're all in a dinghy that doesn't have any anchor right now.
Well, and when thinking about the topic for tonight, when the lies are exposed, the half-truths, the deceptions, etc., in our lives, in spiritual toxic spirituality, there's always a grieving process.
Yes.
What do you mean this isn't true? Or what do you mean the pastor is enjoys child pornography? What do you mean the priest rapes young boys? What do you mean? And there's a moment of shock, and there's a moment, sometimes a lifetime of grief.
Yes. And disconnect, rage, anger, disassociation from feeling safe at all.
Yes. Yes, because sometimes our safety, our feeling of safety, not only for our physical self, but sometimes for our immortal self,
Exactly.
is all of a sudden no longer feeling safe. So if this is true about the leader of our flock, or if this is true about whomever it is, for anybody, your guru or your master teacher, there can be the question of, oh my God, does that mean I'm still a good person? And am I now condemned too?
Right.
So many things.
Right. And I am a product of the revolutionary psychological manifestation of spirit and psychology blurring and blending, and the programs that were really brainstorming how do you become self-responsible, how do you take responsibility for your life, how do you look at yourself and no longer live under the auspices of the assumed authority. You challenge everything, and that's with Dianetics, LifeSpring, Est, any and all of the great big programs, and also with the cults that were starting to really take hold in the past 50 years, with religious leaders saying, come, live with me, bring your families, pay me the money, I give you your home, you're this, we'll teach your children all that. So much exposure is happening right now to find out that type of authority, unfortunately, may have meant well, but ended up with incredible greed, incredible power that's sexualized, incredible power that lied about, if you do not let me be the authority over your life, you do not belong to God. God will not protect you.
Exactly. And Carla Joe is in the chat room, and I love what Carla Joe just wrote. She said, that shattering is what set me on the path that I am now on.
Bravo. Yes, yes, yes. I agree with you because it happened to me too. My seeing what the Catholic Church was doing to me as a young woman when a priest, when he challenged me as a girl, I realized, wait a second, this guy's a guy, and I have a relationship with God that he doesn't have to get involved with. That there's that place of who gets life right?
Mm-hmm.
Who really does get life right? And I also want to be able to, and maybe this is true for you too, and Carla Joe, that I feared getting it wrong.
Yes.
That wandering around out from underneath the umbrella of my known religion as a Catholic, see that even brings up still the vibration in my body of the drama of if I don't get the God right, how will I live my life? How will I die? How will I be protected? All those things. And I wondered where I belonged as a holy person, or a person that really does love God, or a child that learned how to pray. And I didn't lie about loving God. The way I was told God was loving me was a lie.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And having that get exposed, having the lie of an authority that takes on the voice of God, that says you are not worth God's love because of something. I want you all to think about what that steals from you, or what it has stolen from you.
Yes. And that can come from a guru of any sect. It can come from someone who calls themselves a master teacher. It can come from anyone who is seen or we give our spiritual allegiance to. Anyone, and it also involves, of course, religion. So, Sandy, when we're talking about toxic spirituality, that also delves, of course, into organized religion. But when you talk about toxic spirituality, what does that term mean to you?
Toxic spirituality means to me, and it is a bridge between spirituality, religion, and psychology, because we also go to the psychological aspect of who's talking to us, who do we share our life with, where do we go to find comfort and to find common sense, or to unravel our confusion. So it used to be, for thousands of years, the priest or the holy person or the sacred person that was the console. And then again, when psychology became a real manner of establishing a place to talk and to share your identity, to find your identity, it's very important that sexuality in psychology was rabid. That psychiatrists were raping their clients, or even the doctors, where doctors were having sex with their patients, and it's insane how people of power assume they have the right to dominate someone sexually, psychologically, morally, and physically,
and spiritually.
And it's a and I'm kind of activated at the moment.
I can tell. It reminds me of yeah. It reminds me of the term soul rapist.
Yes.
Yeah. It's good to see you, Lady Hawk.
Old.
Yes.
This is centuries old.
Yes, this is not new.
The female, in her normal way of being a hunter-gatherer, the gatherer, the keeper of the hearth, to go out and have Mother Earth give you plants that spoke to you, that these plants were remedies for the children, for the family, that this was the resource for survival. and that the intelligence of the plants and the women would speak about what its vibration was about or what its capacity was about. And that, and I'm going to say this before Jesus was born, that there was that sanctuary of spirit, earth, ground, air, stars. But even then, thousands and thousands of years in Egypt and all these temples, there was that place with, depending on the ego of the leader, depends on the quality of safety, vulnerability, or insanity that you have to maneuver in order to belong, because nobody wants to be excommunicated or deemed unworthy to be a part of the group. Our need to belong gets us in so much trouble.
It does. And it's so innate in us
Yes.
to want to belong somewhere, and maybe not to a large group, but maybe to a very small group. I agree with that.
Yeah. And so it's the vulnerability of being alone, the fear of being alone, the sense that if we do not have an intelligence that we commune with, that looks out for us, that has our back, or that sense of spirit that is our companion. And, it makes me want to cry to say, how alone are we that we fear being alone to the point that we sacrifice ourselves to a power that is abusive, and even if we know it, we stay.
And sometimes we stay because it's also part of the family dynamic to be involved in toxic spirituality, even when the light bulb has gone off for us. We may be seen as the outcast, the black sheep, call it what you will, because we no longer participate in the toxic spirituality.
And we don't participate because the lie has seeped into our consciousness that this is not the only place to be, and this power isn't the only power you have to be obedient to, even if it kills you.
And for some people, it does kill them.
For some people, it does.
It does. It can kill families, family dynamics, friendships, and in the grieving process of letting go of a toxic spirituality, whether it's a group, again, or a guru, what have you, there is shunning. When the lie is finally exposed, however it is exposed to us, whether we are victimized by it or we simply, again, the light goes off and we see something or someone for who they are or what it is, there can be shunning, there can be gaslighting, there can be going of the separate ways, there can be breakups of relationships. And that will sometimes draw us back into the toxicity of spirituality, no different than we get sucked up into toxic relationships in our personal lives. It's not easy when the lie is exposed to go a different way or to express the truth.
One of the things that is horrific is the liar hates to be exposed. And once you accuse the liar of lying, they just don't go, oh, okay. They get angry. They manipulate even more. They accuse you of being the liar, or they're going to take you down for exposing them.
Mm-hmm.
So the risk of understanding a lie, the risk of discovering a lie, the risk of exposing a lie and standing on your own takes bravery, takes awesome autonomy, and it takes the opportunity to know that you're more than one person's judgment of you. You're even more than one God's judgment of you. And I think that, well, I'm going to say, I know for me that it took years for me to be able to find my stride in my understanding that I am judged beyond belief by people and individuals and group who fear me because of my independence, because I don't belong, because I won't concede, because I won't be obedient. They fear me, have anger, and project on me, and accuse me of many, many things. And so, yes, there's grief, there's anger, but there's also defiance. And I may not be living with the people that want me to surrender, but I will find people of exactly the people who we're talking to, yourself, Carla, Joe, and anybody else, the group that, the wanderers that are wandering. And I want to be able to say that we're not a group because we believe in the same God. We are a group because we believe in each other, in the honesty of choosing the path that they're on.
I like that.
And we breathe in and out of each other. It's not about you have to stay here now. It's about representing something that says, I honor you in the time we're together, and I honor you in the passage of our time together.
Yes. Yes.
What do you want to say about that? Because it really is a freedom to be, rather than a new trap or a new prison.
Well, I think that the New Age was fertile ground for traps and trappings.
And still is.
And still is. And you and I have, since the moment we met each other, joked about the fact that we are the opposite of the New Age. And, which has kept some people at bay because we don't promise the, I don't even know how to put this, the elixir of nonsense. We don't prey upon people. And the New Age has done a really great job of preying upon people and the vulnerability of people by taking away oftentimes their own autonomy.
Absolutely. They had to convince them that they didn't have the key to life. And so they needed the leader who had the key to show them the key. But you don't really get the key. You just get to belong to the person who has the key.
Exactly. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with a client last week who asked me about a woman that she had a reading with, who said that the reading would not be complete until she was able to pull a hex off of her. And I said, and how much exactly would it cost to have that hex pulled off of you? And it's usually like $500 or $700. And the woman said, $700. And I said, and please tell me that you did not pay $700. No. And I said, well, thank goodness for that. That's a whole conversation you and I need to have. But being preyed upon, for me, toxic spirituality is when someone's autonomy and authenticity is pulled from them or is hidden from them or made wrong by someone else who appears to be in authority. Does that make sense?
Oh, good God, yes. And the last time that very thing happened to me, literally, was driving down the street in downtown New Mexico, Santa Fe, and my girlfriend and I said, there's one of those, the palm readers with the palm in the window, and it's blinking, psychic readings. And it was like, you know what, let's just go do it. And we went in, and she gave my girlfriend her reading, and she was like, yeah, and I had mine. And, of course, she was like, oh. And it was like, oh, what? And I was in a hard place in my life. And it was like, she goes, oh, I want to help you, but you have to come back tomorrow, da-da-da-da-da-da. And, of course, when I went back tomorrow, I got seduced.
Yes.
my vulnerability was seduced. My fatigue was seduced. My fear that I wasn't free from some darkness in my life was seduced. And so I went back, and I was ready to hear whatever it was, because I was ready to have this thing be over with. And she had maybe a 6-foot candle in a box that had colors and decorations and whatnot, and said that she would light it for me. Are you ready? $2,500.
Oh.
And I looked at her and I said, would you like to take it out of the box so I can see what it is? And she, oh, da, 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 da. And then when she got it all out, I said a few things and walked out. But it was like, at that point, for me, when I feel the ridiculousness of their thinking I'm going to do it, it's like I have to take responsibility that I gave her a vibration about me, that I didn't trust my relationship with God, or that I could take care of the darkness, or something was inside me, because she didn't say it to my girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
She said it to me.
Mm.
So here I am taking responsibility and saying to everybody that listens, our fear that we don't belong, or our sense of our belief that maybe I've been cursed, and some of us have been cursed. I do not want to dismiss that, or feel that, the tragedy in my life is a burden. I have blocks. I have this. I have that, which also the New Age has talked about. Or yes, we have accumulated in our past lives. Or yes, something in our life is so difficult and so dark, we cannot believe that it's the only way we're supposed to experience some life. So I want to talk to the compassion of that, and also the sense of that horror, the burden of that on our souls and our spirits that fatigue us and keep us in the sense that we're less than. We're denied our lives.
Well, and we've all, including you and I, been sucked into these circumstances.
And I have gone to people who can reverse curses or negative energy,
Yep,
or cut cords and everything else, and that too works.
yes.
So you have to have the discernment of who you go to, why you go to, and what is inside of us that we're asking for the help of, and that you're not lied to at that place that someone takes advantage, or you feel that you're so burdened. How do I want to say this? That you let someone take advantage of you. And, that's where the lie of don't lie to yourself. And don't be shamed when someone does take advantage of you. Know that you've been lied to, and don't let it happen again. See how you can protect yourself. Or I'm in a sauce here, and I can feel it. I can feel, well, what happens when we make a mistake? And spirituality, the leader, the foulness does hook us. Mm-hmm. How do we deal with the shame of that? How do we deal with, oh my God, I made the mistake. I brought it on, because the vileness of those people say it's your fault.
Yes. Well, sometimes we can just drop all spirituality.
Exactly. And so the lie is, and even the New Age said that, well, if anything bad happened to you, it's your fault. It's your fault. You created that.
And I wanted to talk about that.
Say it again.
I wanted to talk about that exact thing, Sandy. As Sandy and I were starting this, our show on this topic. So it's going to be a series on toxic spirituality. And tonight, after our intros and a brief talking about what we have so far, talk about one of the things that the New Age really maligned people, burdened people with, shamed people into believing, is that every rotten thing, including their illnesses,
their deaths,
the death of their beloveds, any lingering illness. Some people, have an illness that is lifelong. Part of the New Age and toxic spirituality taught, and in some corners still teaches, that's all on you.
Exactly. That to me is the ultimate lie. And the way I want to address it is because I do have rage at this, and I will point it directly at Est, Werner Erhard's, and the Dianetics of that is where I first heard it. And it lingers through other programs that, sprung out of that, is when people were on their deathbed and the leaders of the group would be listening to the stories of, my brother, my mother, my father has cancer, or they're dying, and then they created it, and they aren't accepting the healing, and if they die, it's their choice. It's their choice. They choose to die. They're not choosing to live. And the people who would say, I want them to live, why aren't they choosing to live? It would actually eliminate the compassion and the most precious of moments where someone's life is just fucking over, not fucking with you about, I want to be with you or I don't want to be with you. And you all know me. I'm crass when I get here because it is crass. It's that place of people would say, how dare they chose death over me. How dare them? And it would separate someone from being with the beauty of someone's need to die because they were simply dying. And it also gave the heartache to the people that were dying that said, but I'm choosing to live. Why aren't I living? I'm choosing it. I want to. Why am I dying? How did I fail my own choice? Didn't God hear me? Didn't I write my vision board for write on staying alive? And these, I'm going to call them entities, linger around because all of a sudden you have the psyche of something else that steals your right to be in the moment with something that is just life, not control.
Yes.
What do you want to say about that, Dana?
Oh, I have a whole lot that I could say about this particular subject because I've had, friends. I have friends, and one of them that I can think about very clearly, and I know she doesn't mind if I share this, is Ortrune Franklin, who has a lifelong disability in her back.
Yes.
As you know. And for years and years and years, tried everything under the sun, every faith healer, energy healer, you name, channeler, to help heal her back. And it was never healed. And so she was told that it was a choice that she made not to heal. And that essentially it is a burden she needs to bear because she's not willing to heal it, or she deserves to have it. Just the myriad of New Age, because, it all comes down to this, Sandy, in my mind. When somebody says, well, the reason this happened to you, that's on you.
Right.
And a lot of time it's because a healer may not be able to fix something. And rather than just say, this is something that may be lifelong, it's not anything you did, it's just how it is, but maybe I can help you manage it.
Exactly.
The blame game is very, what do I want to say? There's a lot of money to be made.
It's opportunistic.
For people to say, well, you got to keep coming back. You're not trying hard enough. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It is very lucrative to be in the business of telling people that their illness, their diagnosis, their disability, the circumstance of their life is of their own doing, karmically, spiritually, in their life as Cleopatra, whatever it happens to be. But keep coming back. And I have a problem with that.
A big problem.
Yeah.
And it also deems the person that is suffering as if they're not good enough to receive the healing.
Yes.
Or they have done something so bad they are being punished by it.
Yes.
Or they aren't smart enough to figure it out so that they can get out of what it is somebody's accusing of them of creating, and, you know, whimpering or whining and wanting attention and blah, 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 blah. And that's part of the horror. I want to call it horror. To convince someone that their suffering is whining because they are not receiving the healing of the authority that bestows the healing.
Mm-hmm.
When is someone allowed to say ow?
Right.
And have the compassion for what they are feeling honored?
Right.
When can someone say mercy and have I think for me, the respect for someone when their time is up and they're saying, it's just over. I can feel it's over. It's not a choice I'm making. It's an agreement I'm experiencing with. This is the process that I'm with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm honoring the process I'm in.
Right.
It takes so much of the fight of vanity out of it.
Yes. And you and I are not talking about the victimhood Olympics or the trauma Olympics. I mean, some people, like to get all geared up, and you see it, I see it, I'll put it that way, a lot on social media, the trauma Olympics of who's been sicker longer and who is more sick than, or who's had more tragedy than, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about participants in the Olympics of victimization or victimhood. But we're talking about people that are living their life and trying to find solace or peacefulness or a place of balance in their life circumstance. And some people in spirituality, people in a position, so-called of authority or what have you, specialty, are so capable of seeing who it is that is vulnerable and taking advantage of that.
Right. And what happens, this is interesting. There's such a possibility. There's such a avenue of, I want to say it the way that I'm feeling it, and I don't feel it very well in my body, so there's a roughness here. There's such a vulnerability by an ego that sees something that is damaged and plays with it.
Yes.
And takes advantage of it and manipulates it. So it's the newest and greatest and the most exposed thing that is out there right now is the narcissist.
Yes.
I mean, narcissism has been around since the beginning of time. You've got Cain and Abel right there. But for whatever reason, narcissism now is the key word, the biggest word. Anybody and everybody that's on, TikTok or this, that, or the other thing is like narcissism. Well, we have to be really aware of the fact that narcissism has been around and is the big liar. Is the big lie. That it has power over you and you're lied to through the narcissism of educators, spiritual people, politicians, parents, brothers, sisters. And not everybody is a narcissist, but it is, why do you think that we get so seduced by narcissistic people? We
Well,
get so entrapped by them.
the perception of power, or the perception of they have it all together. Or sometimes we're seduced because they are in the business of seducing, and
Yes.
seducing with absolute precision. Their cunning, their cunning is spectacular.
Yeah. And they have a chill in their heart.
Yeah.
They do have a heartlessness. And this kind of comes down to the ethical place of, I know for myself, I have been a victim to narcissism, and I will take responsibility for, I could feel that something was happening, and I wanted to prove to them that I was worth loving. That's a little girl. That's like, wait a second, but you want to love me, don't you? You want to treat me kinder, don't you? Why do you want to hurt me? Why would you? And crying to my mother about the narcissistic people in my life or my family. And it was like, oh, well, you know, they're like, or this, and being informed that you couldn't do anything about it, and you're a nice person, try harder, oh, they lied. So the lie is on the lie on the lie. And I can't say that my mother lied about it. I'm saying there wasn't enough information about it. So it was deceptive.
Mm-hmm. So when is the first time that you knew that you were being lied to and the lie was exposed? What was that experience like for you, Sandy? In spirituality, I'm talking about.
Say it again?
In spirituality.
The first time I knew I was really being lied to were two. I'm going to go for two. The first one was when my mother and I was very, very sick, 7 kids, and we lived out of town. We were in the suburbs, and this was when my mother couldn't get us to church. My father was busy working, and blah, 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 blah. And and the church moved. They were rebuilding the church, and so all the chaos about the church. We couldn't get to the church. And so I went to confession, and I am maybe 14, 15. I'm right at that cusp of feeling my oats. And I'm also burdened with the reality that I'm taking care of a lot of kids, and I'm only 14, 15 years old. So, the second oldest of 7 kids, you buckle up and you join in. So I had the compassion of, we can't get to church. But I was not in that place, oh my God, I have to get to church. It was like, okay, we're not going to church today because we were out of reach of church. I go to confession. And I am a good Catholic girl. I mean, they got me. And went into, name of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, I sinned, these are my sins, and I missed church on Sunday. And the priest paused and said, excuse me? And I was like, what? How many times did you miss church? And I said, I don't know. And I'm in that phase of, wait a second, why am I not, I missed church, I told him I sin. Now it's like, how many times? I don't know. And he got an attitude that made me fear and was suspicious of the challenge. And I want to be able to describe this as I'm on my knees in the box, there's the priest, and I have enough sass in me to go, wait a second, this is not a voice of someone having compassion for me that I can't get to church. This is about somebody that's accusing me of not knowing how come I didn't get to church, how many times I get. My confessor wanted more. And it felt like the Inquisition instantly. I mean, everything inside me just was like, red flag, red flag. And I'm saying that because I didn't know that was a red flag. I just knew my body reacted to something that was now dangerous. And I never felt, no matter how sinful I was as a little girl, calling my sister and father a name and all that stuff, so bad, that I'm in danger. This guy has authority over me right now. And he wanted to know how many times I missed church. And he got more and more aggressive. I said probably, I don't know, 3 times. And it was like, I kind of went, I don't know, as like a little girl. How many times? And then it was like, I don't know. Like, hey, I don't know. A kid on the street. Who's in the backyard? I don't know. And then it was, how many times? And it was that clarity of, I don't know. And he said, figure it out. In that moment, really, in that moment, I didn't talk to him. I closed my eyes and said to God, I'm going to lie, and I'm never coming back here. Because I knew that priest didn't care about my mother being sick, didn't care about the 7 kids that were being taken care of, didn't care about my father was working overtime. He only cared about me being something controlled by him.
Yes.
Everything inside of me knew it, and something inside of me knew me and God had a deal, and he wasn't going to break it. But I also knew that when I said to God, I'm going to lie just to get out of here. I said, let me count. Okay. And I gave it to him. He gave me so much penance. I was saying it until just before I went to get my, host the next day. So I still lived in the fear of, I've got to say these prayers he gave me. God's watching. I mean, it's like, I'm not going to be so arrogant that I don't say my penance. But as I was saying my penance, out of the fear of, I can't go receive communion until what this priest obliged me to do, to receive a sacrament. I didn't have the wherefore of that yet. But I knew I wasn't going to go back to confession. And now you don't have to go to confession as a Catholic. Now you can touch the host yourself. So many of the rules have changed since that 14-year-old girl was literally told by the priest, if I didn't know how many times that I was not in church, that he would dismiss me from the confessional, and I wasn't allowed to go to church the next day.
Wow.
I was being excommunicated right there. Mm. It was more than a lie. It was a game. And I think that's what we all need to realize, that these lies are a game that is played at our expense. And when we don't know that we're being toyed with, played with, used, sacrificed, used for entertainment, then we are victim to our own lack of intelligence.
Well, what you're talking about is indoctrination as a child.
Yes.
And so when children are indoctrinated into toxic spirituality, even when that child is 50 years old, rather than deduce from the rational mind of a 50-year-old, we tend to go back into that fearful place of the 5-year-old.
Yes.
It's the 5-year-old that says, but if I don't go, I've committed a mortal sin, not a venial sin, but a mortal sin, and my immortal soul will die.
Right.
We're not rational because we were indoctrinated as a child.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
One of the great lies is the shock of when my mother passed away. My mother let me know years after the fact, when she supported me and arranged for me to get my first abortion, when abortion was not legal. I let her know that I was pregnant. I was going to go get an abortion, and I was going to go to Tijuana, blah, blah, blah. And she just let me see what I can do. And she was going to a doctor with my father. And she had a sense that this doctor, if she asked him, could, would, maybe if, he did. And I got to go to the abortionist for the Kennedys in Cape Cod. And this would have been in summer 67. No, summer 66. And so years later, my mother let me know that abortion, her involving herself with that, made her feel exactly what you're saying. She created a mortal sin from the indoctrination of her upbringing as a child.
Mm-hmm.
Her heart assisting her daughter was one thing. Her soul betraying God and religion and all that authority was something else. And when she spoke that reality to me, when she told me that, we were in Santa Fe, and I looked at her and it was like, Mom, but you helped me. And her anger that her love for her daughter would violate her love for God or her agreement with God, and she couldn't get to. I'm talking about things that are so complicated in the psyche. But then she held me responsible for that sin bestowed upon her. And it was, wait a second. And I took that at heart and did many, many things about that between her and I and God. So when she passes away, she lived to be 92 years old, and we're talking about, 20 some odd years after the fact that she had that conversation with me, maybe 30 years. And I knew that she had days left. She was in Florida. I was not down there. I called down into her, wherever she was at the center she was living at, the home, and asked for the priest or whatever, please call me. And I got a hold of the priest, and it was on Christmas Eve. And I am down in Massachusetts in a mall because I'm shopping for Christmas. And the priest calls, and I'm sitting in my car in a mall, in a parking lot, having a conversation about my mother helping me with an abortion when I was, in 1966. And here we are, 45 years later. And maybe more. Long story short, I tell the priest, would you please go give my mother absolution for assisting me with an abortion? It is on her heart. She can't speak. She was already in and out, and she was dying. And I doubt that she would confess that, but it's on her soul. And these are the kind of things where if you don't confess this, you don't get to heaven with a mortal sin. The priest said to me, well, even if she does not confess and does not receive the last rites in her penance and whatnot, she'll get to heaven because God is forgiving of all things at the end. And I said to him, then why do we have to go to confession? And why have you told us we wouldn't get to God unless we did? Merry Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you literally and that church have let my mother live with this for 50 years, 45 years. And calling and talking to him and crying, and my mother, and it's the last gift I can give to my mother, blah, 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 blah. And that lie that you don't get it if you don't do it, that God's just going to embrace you in anyhow, was like, what on earth are you doing to us?
Yes.
If we can die out in the field and you didn't get baptized, you didn't get nobody came and anointed you, and you're fearing, I'm not going to have my last rites, how am I going to get to heaven? He unveiled something that I thought, oh my God, this is one of the cruelest things I've ever heard for my mother. And a lot of cruel things happened in her life. And I was grateful. Oh, the room just popped. I am grateful that I was able to take that shame off of her, not by a priest, by me saying to her, it didn't matter, Mom. Our love did. That child being loved by you to stop it from coming, that's what mattered. You're good with God. So my talking to the priest and finding out the lie, for me, took the shame off of me, shame off of her, the sin off. And it was like, you kind of toss it to the side and say, enough. Enough.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I've had those same sorts of things, growing up in the Catholic Church and realizing, well, this is a big bag of bullshit. What do you mean only Catholics are going to heaven, right? These people sitting next to me at this funeral are Lutheran, and I'm pretty sure they're going to heaven too. So that kind of a thing. But I think outside of all of that, and sometimes being the person who exposes the BS is not easy either. And I noticed my sister Del Marie made a comment on our show page looking deeper about what about the medicine men, the Wichashawakan, who aren't holy men. They're just there to take advantage of.
That's right. What about them?
Right. And, it's been more than one time when somebody has said to me, so what did you think of that ceremony? And I've said, well, to me, it was a big bag of bullshit. Right. That was the biggest bag of phony baloney, vaudeville sideshow that I've ever experienced. And that doesn't necessarily make you popular with everybody when you call BS when you see it that way. Because, and recently one of the actors from Dances with Wolves was just arrested for that exact thing. He has 5 wives living with him, and he's been banned from reservations up north near the Canadian border, I think in North Dakota. Not welcome there because after the success of Dances with Wolves, he became a self-proclaimed medicine man. And and began grooming young women, and the charges against him are human trafficking and sex trafficking. And I have seen this kind of behavior with my own eyes in the arena of medicine people, and it ain't pretty. So it's not just something that happens in the Catholic Church or the Christian faith. It's everywhere there's power to be had. And, I've always said to Todd, Todd, because you have a penis, if you put on white linen and decided to call yourself some sort of kind of a guru and you do know the language, you would be a multi-billionaire.
Absolutely.
In a matter of months, because there are a lot of lonely women who have been conditioned since birth and childhood that you find comfort and authority in a man.
And a lot of men who don't have the fucking balls to stand up and identify themselves as men.
Right.
Who will take responsibility for creating a life and providing safety.
Yes. Yes. So toxic spirituality is really across the board, and it's based on for me, it lies within our own vulnerabilities as humans. We're all here having a human experience. The moment we're born, I believe we're always looking for love. We're always looking to make our way home, and home is love. So we find love in all the wrong places, and oftentimes those wrong places can be in spiritual corridors that are lined with people who are just waiting for the potential of their next victim, or to line their coffers with the promise of, but you'll go to heaven, or you will have better karma in the next life, etc., etc. And the glitz and the glamour that can come with spirituality. So it's our own humanness that can get us caught up in those things, wanting to belong and feeling loved and feeling warm and feeling like our soul has a home, because our soul is not at home currently. It's in one of the homes, but our soul is looking for places of comfort, and our human mind finds it sometimes in really irrational places. Because when you sit down and you really think about some of the things that we've been told, whether it's about Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy, and extrapolate that into spiritual or religious texts and doctrines. In fact, right after the show tonight, here in just a couple of minutes, I'm enrolled in a class with a biblical scholar who is teaching a class on the Bible and Satan, and the fact that there is no talk about Satan, a devil, in the Bible. And he's a scholar. So I'm always learning and seeing the truth, and where the manipulation came in and by whom, and perpetuated by whom and why. And I think that we're part of a generation now, Sandy, us and those younger than us, like everybody in the chat room, that is saying, all right, enough with the fairy tales, everybody. Let's get down to who we really are as human/divine beings, what our relationship is to the unseen and the divine world. And all of this good old boys club, I call it the country club dues that you're asking us to pay, is bullshit. So let's get down to the practicality of the matter of our own autonomy and authenticity as spiritual beings having a human experience. Well, that just came right out, didn't it, Sandy? As you would say, I kind of felt like I was on the pulpit there for a minute.
Yeah. And and like you say, for us to do a series, for us to even, we're considering doing a class on healing from the people that have been burdened with the shame of just being human. There's this place where there is the accountability of seeing how, and I take full responsibility for myself, in hindsight is everything.
Yes.
Yes. I wanted to be the seductress of the leader up there that was wearing the gold chain and was sassy and shiny. Yes, I wanted to be chosen. My competitional, my ambitious self or my competitive self was like, I want that shiny toy. I know that we as human beings, when we're sexual, when we're ovulating, when we need to get chosen, be protected, be provided for, we do a lot of things that we can sit back later and go, oh my God.
What were you thinking? What was I thinking? Well, I think that our podcast next month, we should talk about, if you are amenable, toxic spirituality on death and dying.
Well, good God, yes, of course.
Good deaths and sin.
Yeah.
And talking about I knew, one of the things I knew early on was a big fat load of BS, was when I was told that dogs and animals don't have souls.
Yeah.
And therefore don't go to heaven.
Right.
Well, number one, I see souls. I see people who are supposed to be dead. So I always had that one up on priests and nuns and stuff.
Right.
That's when I really started having a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to kind of congratulate you on crossing a line tonight. I don't know how many times I've heard you swear.
I know.
Like, you let it rock tonight, sister.
Well, I did, because I have a problem with people who are being willfully injured.
Yes.
And knowingly injured by spirituality, no different than animals that are being beaten and abused. Soul rapists are real.
Yes.
And I have a lot to say about that, obviously. And sometimes my Scorpio language gets a little bit spicy.
Yes.
So there.
Thank God. And for me, it's fangs and claws and the motherfucker in me that comes out and literally has that place with where does a no mean no? And, the words that we are using tonight are pray.
Right.
You can be prayed for or prayed upon.
Yes.
Same word.
There you go. Yeah.
Different action. But when you're prayed upon, we do hope somebody finds us, but we have to find out what it is we want them to do, why we don't feel safe. And I just opened up a can of worms that I'm going to cover up for right now. But exactly what you were saying, we have to find out what it is that does attract us to that abuse, or supports us, or disenfranchises our psyche to the point where I'm only worth being abused.
Yes.
By anything, spiritual, medical, physical, political, or in your home.
Yeah.
Or your community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, final comments from our beautiful ladies in the chat room. Lily is saying, I love this topic and glad you ladies are doing a series. CJ is saying, Carla Joe is saying, I have a problem with male authority, always have had, partly because of past lives that I remember and the torture and deaths that caused so many. Oh my goodness, there's a whole topic. And Holly Hagen saying, but that's why we love you. Haha, we'd all want you on our side.
Thank you, ladies.
And we are holding a good thought for you, Lady Hawk, as you work through all of these things with your daughter. Sometimes, even though we're spiritual beings and we're trying to do the best we can, sometimes we do have to let go. And sometimes when toxic things happen to us, it's good to have a therapist, good to have a counselor.
Go. Let somebody walk through the dark. Please do not fear having your brain looked at.
Yes. There we go. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Have a beautiful evening.
Love.
Sandy,
good night, Dana. Have a good class.
Okay, love. Bye-bye.